Hey everyone, welcome back to Muddy Ruttzz. We drove our Jeep Gladiator EcoDiesel all the way from southern New Mexico to Colorado to attend the 38th annual Ouray Jeep Jamboree. We were ready to test out 3 years worth of mods to our Gladiator and those new Mickey Thompson Pizza Cutter tires. But what started off as a gear test quickly became an unexpected transformative event for my wife. By day 3, we reached the Buffalo Boy Mine. My retired school librarian was a confident, skilled off-road driver I've never been prouder. She did all the driving, climbing to over 12,000 foot elevation while negotiating steep hills and tight switchbacks with very steep drop-offs. I handed her snacks and did the photography. An incident on day 3 created a situation where she had to drive the toughest part of the trail completely on her own. It was the moment she proved to herself and everyone in our group that my retired librarian was now the real deal. Getting a reservation for a Jeep Jamboree is tough, especially Ouray. They sell out fast. In this video, I'm sharing my wife's transformative story, plus all my best tips to help you reserve your chosen Jamboree and what you absolutely need to know when you get there. And here's my tip number 1. Attend a Jeep Adventure Academy for 2 reasons. The first reason, like my wife, was you are new to Jeeps and off-roading and want to learn how to use the features and what it's capable of. We drove our Wrangler Willys EcoDiesel to the one in Hollister, California SVRA several years ago. My wife was determined not to be the driver, but as soon as we got there, the instructor, who was a big old friendly guy, greeted us with a huge welcoming smile and said, "It's going to be a great day." She was immediately reassured. She learned the techniques, the angles, the 4-wheel drive features. She knew what to do. Since then, whenever we are overlanding in places like Death Valley or Alabama Hills, you'll find her behind the wheel. But that final level of confidence, that belief in her own driving skill, was still elusive. The second reason, that academy trip got us onto the priority list for choosing a Jamboree before the general public. Believe me, that was a huge advantage because Ouray sells out in a couple of hours. If you're serious about attending a popular Jamboree, start with the Adventure Academy. It was a blast and it gave us a real edge. Jamborees are typically 3 days, 1 getting oriented and 2 on the trail. Day 1 of the Ouray Jamboree, all the Jeeps lined up at the designated area for the drive-through evaluations. Guides ask a few questions like what is your tire size, the lift on your rig, how long have you been driving off-road, and do you have the required GMRS radio? My tip number 2, line up early. Jeeps start showing up way before the advertised time, and it pays to get ahead of the curve. There were about 126 Jeeps at Ouray, making it for a huge crowd. Waiting in line is actually a great chance to meet other attendees and see all the other cool rigs. After the evaluation, we headed to the Ouray Community Center to pick out our trails. You can meet the lead guide for each trail and ask more questions to see if that is a trail you want to do. The guides are super helpful in picking out the trails and will leave you smiling at the end of the day. The community center is also where the meals are served. And here's my tip number 3. Before you even sign up for a Jeep Jamboree, do an honest assessment of your Jeep and your driver's skills. How many mods have you made to your rig, like lift kits and larger tires, to make it more capable? And how much off-road experience does your driver have? Trails are rated 1 to 10, with the Rubicon being a 10. Check the Jeep Jamboree website for details. You don't have to conquer Mount Everest on your first Jeep Jamboree. It's day 2, and we signed up for the Yankee Boy and Governor Basin trails. First stop, head into town for the Jeep Jamboree breakfast at the community center and grab a sack lunch to eat out on the trail. My tip number 4, get to breakfast early and get to the staging area early. Staying at the Twin Peaks Lodge across from the staging area, my wife had time to go to the motel and take care of last-minute personal stuff. We left breakfast, parked the Jeep in the Yankee Boy line, 3rd Jeep behind the guide. Our group was small, 8 Jeeps, and that includes the leader and the tail gunner. My tip number 5, any place in the lineup is fine, but be aware of how built the Jeep in front of you is. If they have a massive lift, their lines over obstacles might not work for your rig. Don't be afraid to choose your own path. 8:45 a.m. sharp, we headed out. A short distance south of Ouray, off Highway 550, we turned on Camp Bird Road, drove a ways, and then stopped For the driver's meeting, airing down tires and making sure everyone's GMRS radio was on the same channel. This is a good time for last minute questions and a few words about tread, trail etiquette from the guides, leaving the trail in better shape than you found it. We are about to have the adventure of a lifetime. My tip number 6, have a decent air down tool and your own compressor for airing up after the trip. Airing down will give you a softer ride and more traction. Our guide was Mike and the tail gunner was Hunter, and they had two of the coolest rigs I saw at the entire event. We left the turnout where we had the driver's meeting, and following another Gladiator headed up Camp Bird Road to the fork to Yankee Boy Basin Road and made a pit stop at some pretty nice BLM bathrooms. Soon after leaving there, Mike called out on the radio that it was time to shift into 4 low because we would be climbing over rough terrain. We turned off Yankee Boy Basin onto Governor's Basin Road and starting heading up to what would be our lunch spot. My tip number 7, for long climbs over rough terrain, switch to 4-wheel drive low. It makes clearing obstacles easier and saves wear and tear on your transmission by using the optimal gear. My wife at the wheel, we started hitting some of the tougher obstacles. I thought I was going to have to jump in and coach her, but she quickly shut that down. She looked over, quoted something she learned years ago at the Adventure Academy, and made it clear. She was completely in control. For the next few hours, negotiating steep climbs, tight switchbacks, and awesome descents, I could literally see her confidence level rising. At our lunch stop in Governor's Basin, several folks came over to comment on what a good driver she was. It was the best feeling. She didn't just meet the challenge, she blew past it. My tip number 8, stay laser focused on the trail. All it takes is one tire over the side and you're rolling down the mountain. We were all over the mountain for the rest of the day, driving from Governor's Basin onto Yankee Boy Basin Road. When the weather started changing and the snow was flying, I thought for sure Mike would turn us around, but he kept us climbing to the very end of Yankee Boy, where it turns into Blue Lakes hiking trail. There, my wife had to maneuver the Jeep onto a rock outcropping in a tiny makeshift parking lot and handled that with ease. I was in awe. She was acing all the challenges. It was cold and windy up there, and some folks stayed in their Jeeps. I got out because the views of the surrounding mountains and Ruttzz Lake below us were simply amazing. Many in the group were nervous about the weather, but Mike decided to drive us past that glacial lake on the spur road before heading back down Yankee Boy Road. I'm glad he did, because that was a beautiful sight. We passed a couple Jeeps on the way down who fortunately had spots to pull over and let us go by. My tip number 9, when two vehicles meet on the same narrow trails, the vehicle going uphill has the right of way. Coming down from Yankee Boy Basin, we had a nice stop to stretch our legs and tour some pretty nice waterfalls. Then we blasted down Camp Bird Road with a quick stop to thank Mike for being a great guide and Hunter for his tail gunner work, and then jumped back on Highway 550 for the quick trip back to Ouray. Believe me, we were ready to get back by then. Our third day of the Jeep Jamboree started out much like the second, with a quick breakfast and then lining up in the staging area behind our guide Drew's Jeep. The Stony Pass Buffalo Boy Run would take us all the way to Silverton, Colorado to access the trails. We drove 8 miles south on Highway 550 out of Ouray to the Ironton Park staging area to regroup and air down. From there, we headed up Corkscrew Gulch Trail. Beautiful scenery, lots of trees, and driving it for my wife was a piece of cake compared to the terrain she conquered on Yankee Boy, but that would change before this day's wheeling was done. A brief stop at a BLM pit toilet was a welcome break for obvious reasons, and also a chance to look around at the mountains. Awesome colors everywhere. From there, we climbed up to Corkscrew Pass, and that was another chance at awesome views and some photos. From here, it would be mostly downhill to the town of Silverton. My tip number 10, use your transmission, not your brakes, to slow yourself on long downhills. I have a diesel, so when I shift into low, it's actually the motor's compression slowing me. When you get to Silverton, you can jump on the Stony Pass Trail and start the 3,300-foot climb to the top. This is also the Continental Divide, separating the Atlantic and Pacific watersheds. It's also part of the Alpine Loop. I was a happy passenger and my wife was just killing the off-road driving. And then up here at Stony Pass, we got separated. A side-by-side with a flat showed up and the guide and me tried to help him. While I was trying to inflate his tire, instead of delaying the entire group, the decision to have the tail gunner lead the rest to Buffalo Boy mine was made. I jumped up from helping with the flat, looked down the trail and saw our group way down the hill. My wife was on her own and I was jumping in the guide's Jeep for the ride to Buffalo Boy. We headed down and the trail was not too bad. 2-3 rating till we turned to head up to the mine. I realized the Buffalo Boy Trail was the section that was a 5 rating. As the guide and I climbed, the trail became steep and narrow with super tight switchbacks and sheer drop-offs that I hadn't even noticed the day before. It hit me. My wife was driving this alone. In fact, by then, the whole group, other than the guide and me, were already up at Buffalo Boy, taking photos and socializing. When we finally got up there, several Jeepers told me how my wife was killing it driving that trail. I could not have been prouder of her. My meek librarian wife, who did not want to get behind the wheel at the Jeep Adventure Academy, had crossed that line and become a confident off-road driver and adventurer. My tip number 11, my final tip, don't wait to find your own confidence on the trail. If you're looking for an unforgettable adventure, I highly recommend checking out a Jeep Jamboree. Let me know in the comments below, what's the toughest trail you've ever driven? I'll see you on the next one, and don't forget, on Mighty Ruttzz, the best is yet to come.